Good morning. My name's Janine. I'm with Janine. I'm with Janine Parent Coaching, and I am here to share with you something I've been thinking about lately, which is asking, making sure that you are asking the questions so that you're getting where you want to be in life, and just wanting to explore what are some reasons why we don't ask, which and then we wonder why we're not where we want to be. And so, um, what kind of brought me here was a few weeks ago. I was on Facebook and got caught into some Facebook reels. We know how this works, right? So I'm watching these reels because, I have a little bit of downtime. And so I ended up watching a Steve Harvey reels, one of his motivational talks. And he was just sharing a little bit about his story about how it is he got to where he is in life. And he shared a story that his mom used to always say, um, "You have not because you ask not." And he was like, somewhere in the Bible, I don't know where it is, but I know it's in the Bible, which I thought was odd because he always kind of knows where Bible scriptures are. But anyway, so then that kind of intrigued me, like to look it up. So it is in the Bible. It's not necessarily meant that way, but we always make sure that you understand things in context. So I do want to encourage you to um, make sure you understand the context of the verse. Share what it is, but basically it was James 4, verse 2 and 3, mainly in verse 2. And so James 4, 2 and 3 says in entirety, "You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures." So that's the full context of it. So in verse 2, it does say, "You have not because you do not ask God." And knows that wasn't included in his verse and what his mom used to tell him apparently. But there that still holds true. And so it just kind of had me. So that then started me thinking about this book that I got few years ago rather. That I didn't finish the book. But that's a whole other thing. But it's a book called Ask. Ask, right? Ask, the bridge from your dreams to your destiny. And so that made me think about, like, oh yes, I remember this book I bought years ago about asking questions and working through like what's holding you back from asking questions and what questions do you ask and all these things. And so I thought this would be a good topic for me to discuss in a live event. So here we are. Hey, so the first thing I want to bring up is why we don't ask, and that is fear of rejection. No one likes to hear the word no. Not even animals. My dog, she doesn't like hearing the word no. My daughter, she'll ask for something and she doesn't like for me to say no, right? I mean, like I say no a lot to the point where when I say I'll think about it, she's excited. She's like, "Oh, you can think about it. Yay." It's hilarious. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, but she doesn't want to hear the word no. So she would much prefer me be thinking about it than for me to just say no. But hearing no or being afraid to hear the word no is a powerful moderator. It keeps your tongue quiet. It makes you kind of sit down and wait, and you just kind of wait for things to happen. But what ends up happening as you're sitting and waiting and pondering, all because you don't want to hear the word no, is the things that you want that you are afraid to ask for, that you haven't asked for, continue to elude you. And so it becomes this pattern. You're kind of stuck in a space wanting for things to just kind of like happen, but it doesn't because you haven't asked. So what do? You have to break that pattern, and you break the pattern with a decision. And what's the decision? To ask. And so when you ask, you have to be open to hearing the word no. So I remember growing up, my mom used to always tell me, it's funny, like how Steve Harvey. So my mom used to always tell me, don't be afraid to ask. And as you ask, be open to the possibility that the response could be either yes or no. So you have to be okay with that. As long as you're okay with a yes or a no, then go for it. Ask the question. So I remember very vividly, I put this into practice. I remember I was in sixth grade and I was at my friend Anita's house. I was watching a movie. It might have been a school night. I don't really remember all the details, but I remember I was at her house. I was watching a movie. And my stepdad, my mom was at work. So my stepdad, called and was like, hey, I need you to come home, just whatever, right? And I was just like, well, I've remembered, like my mom said, I can always ask the question, and all they can say is yes or no. So I asked my stepdad, I said, hey, Paul, um, can I just stay till the end of the movie? I mean, like the movie was maybe ending in like 30 minutes. So I was like, can I just stay and watch the end of the movie? Apparently, he was not happy with me asking that question. That he had a nice long discussion with my mom. But anyway, he told me no. And so, okay, no worries. So I asked, I think her mom brought me home. No big deal. I didn't get to see it in the movie. I was sad, but I accepted the no and I came home. But my mom was not upset with me because she said, well, I've always taught her to ask the question, and you said no and she came home. So like what's the upset? So anyway, so I still have that belief, and I still sometimes when I get nervous about asking, then I remember I'm like, what am I worried about? All they can say is yes or no, and if I don't ask the question, they can't say yes. How about that? If I don't ask the question, the answer is automatically no. So I have to ask. So, so that's one reason. So another thing to consider that's kind of brought up in this book is possibility of being um, too insecure or or you're feeling or you have a feeling of unworthiness, like you don't deserve it or you don't deserve better. And so that in the coaching world, we call that those limiting beliefs and gremlins. Limiting beliefs is when you just have a belief that it's not something you can do. It's not something your family can do. Like this is not something that we do. Like there's no real rhyme or reason. That's just a thing that you grew up learning, and so that's your belief. And then a gremlin is just like that little voice in your head, and we all have this that just says, you can't do that. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You don't deserve that. That little voice that just wants to kind of like hold you back. That's the gremlin. And so he talks of a story of there's a guy named Bob, and I'm looking in the book. So there's a guy named Bob, and Bob was this insecure kid who grew up always being afraid to ask because he didn't want people to think that he didn't know. So that was how he grew up. That was his belief. His belief was that if you don't know, then I guess that's not a good thing. So he wasn't secure enough. His belief was that you need to be secure in yourself to be able to acknowledge that you don't know something, so you can in asking for other people to help. So that was a belief of his that he needed to shift. So when he was in his 20s, he met a guy named Ray. And Ray used to talk with him and ask him questions, and would ask him questions that he never even thought to ask himself. And so one time Ray asked him the question, um, what do you want? And his response was, I said, I want some money because I didn't have any. So I figured if I had some money, all my problems would go away. And so he says in his book, when he told me, when Ray told me I could have anything I wanted, he said, I didn't believe it. But I believed he believed. So it caused me to start asking myself questions. So he started asking himself, why is he doing this? Why don't I listen to him? Why does he think I'm capable of doing more? What does he see in me that I don't? So even those questions that he asked himself started to give him a glimmer of hope and the possibility of something more. And so years later, he ends up starting a cleaning business. And so he started cleaning the business with one, account. So he's cleaning this one office. And he knew he could make more money if he had more offices. So he got more and more contracts and more offices to clean. And so he's cleaning all of these offices. So he ends up being exhausted to a point where he passes out in the middle of the street somewhere. And so he says he wakes up one day and he sees officers and police officer and paramedics above him wanting to take him to the hospital. And he's like, no, I'm not going to go to the hospital. I know my issues and I'm exhausted. So he said he took himself somewhere so he could be by himself. And he was thinking, he said he heard a voice in his head. And the voice said, if you can't clean all of them, don't clean any of them. And he said that was pivotal to him. So he didn't take that to mean get out of the cleaning business. He knew that meant he needed help. And so what did he do? He got himself up and he started finding other people to work the business for him. And so as a result, he started making more money, working fewer hours because he had other people helping him. And so that was a turning point in his life. He had to acknowledge that he needed help. Because we all do. We can't do it all by ourselves. We can't do it all. We don't know it all. We need help. And the first thing to do is to acknowledge that we need help. He said he realized that his biggest gain was from asking himself questions and asking others for their help and insight. So my last point that I wanted to make is another point. There's something that he mentions in here is that the quality of the question defines the answer. So what's the question that you're asking? Many times we're asking the wrong question. So he mentions even in here, many times we ask the question, how do I get out of debt, for example? But instead we should ask, how do I create abundance? So what happens is when we ask ourselves that question, it gets us thinking, it gets our subconscious brain thinking of ways to get to that solution, the solution of abundance. It gets us thinking creatively about how can I be abundant? And when you have abundance, then you have what you need to get out of debt. But when you're focused on the problem being debt, then that's what you're continue to just focus and spin around and focusing on the debt, and that isn't really solving the problem. Just to get to be a bit exhausting, I would say. So what questions are you asking, or being asked of you that's moving you forward in the direction that you would like to go? And if the questions aren't getting you in that direction, then you need to ask different questions. And so in closing, what I wanted to say is just one question can shift your perspective. Just one question can start to shift that perspective. He even mentioned that Jesus once mentioned, which of course Jesus mentioned, so it says a lot. But Jesus says in Matthew, I believe 7:7, yes, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. And in verse 8, for anyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks, the door will be opened. So it really does start with asking. So I hope that you found this helpful to you. And if you find yourself in a situation where you want to move forward in asking for what it is that you want, and you feel like you're stuck and you need some help, I'm available for one-on-one coaching. If you're open to taking a closer look into seeing how I can help, or if you were to hire me as a coach, then just simply in the comments below, you can just say, hey, Janine, I'm interested in coaching. Or you can send me, you can go to my website, which is janineparrottcoaching.com, and I'll also put the link in the comments. But you can fill out my form and send it off to me, and I'll reach out to you. We can set up a time where we can talk comfortably about what it is that you're looking to do, and we can see how we want to proceed from there. All right? So until next week, have a great rest of the morning. Bye.